Hey, what's up everybody? This is host Rook501 and today I want to quickly go over the entirety of the new raid, the Molly 1 takedown, and I want to show you guys footage of an entire run. Now, I wasn't able to solo the entire thing. A Moe's rocket launcher build I don't think is the best for killing the raid boss at the end. Specifically one of the phases, it seemed pretty close to impossible on even on just Mayhem 3, which is what I did it on. So I did the first half of myself. I did a bunch of wipes on the last boss, and then a friend of mine wanted to play, so he just joined in and then we killed it. So that will be the kill at the end. Overall, the raid is pretty good. The last fight seems really like anti-Moe's rocket launcher builds for one specific part, which is the part I couldn't really get past on solo, so I think I'll have to switch up my build for that. But first off, how the raid actually works: if you die, say you're playing solo, if you fully die, you don't respawn, you get sent back to the start until you beat the first boss. Then after you beat the first boss, that gives you another waypoint, and after you beat that first boss, which is like a mini boss I guess, if you wipe at any point, you go back to that save. And if you have more people, you can revive each other, but if someone dies, they have to wait till your group either wipes and goes back to a save spot or beats whatever boss they're on, then you spawn with them. So that's how that works. Now the first boss, also there's a ridiculous amount of just basically trash or just tons of enemies that aren't boss enemies between both the bosses. There's a ridiculous amount that you have to clear out. So you'll see that in the video. You just go through, that's just tons of enemies. Whatever you can clear tons of enemies with as quick as possible is going to be best. The first boss is 3 bosses that have tied health. They all have shields, then only armor. And what happens after you face them for a little bit, because you face them all at the same time, they all go up to their own pedestals and they're immune to damage. And then they will constantly spawn waves of enemies. I'm pretty sure it's just like 1 wave per boss. And basically what happens with that is one of the bosses will come down. You'll face that boss and pretty much like a wave of enemies or multiple waves of enemies with that one boss. After they take a certain amount of damage, I'm not certain if there's a certain amount of time that could also make them go back up. They'll become immune and go back to their pedestal, then the next boss, then the next boss. Then after that, at the end, you face all the bosses again and waves of enemies. And they're not really that hard. It's pretty much just a lot of enemies. The bosses don't do anything crazy themselves, but it's just sheer amount of enemies. So you have to worry about tons of badasses, all different types of melee amount of enemies with the bosses. So it's pretty much just sheer numbers is this first fight, and that's pretty much it. There's not really any like crazy strategies or effects you have to worry about or anything like that. Then you go through, you face tons and tons of more enemies, dozens of enemies at a time. Then you get to the raid boss, the invincible boss at the end. This thing has a lot of different phases. So first off, you start off with him inside a shield. Now this will change. Now what happens is basically he has actual shielding, so an actual shielding, but then a physical shield around him that you can't shoot through. Now when you first get there, it's open at the top and there's a little section at the bottom that are pretty much open as well. Once you take down his first shields, you can damage his armor a bit. When you get shield next, this shield is pretty much the shield he has for most of the fight after that, which is pretty much an open top shield, the physical shield I'm talking about. He will regain his actual shields as well when he gets these new physical shields that are spinning around him. And it's open at the top, and there's one basically opening that spins around him, so you have to get shields down. And when his shields are actually down, he's only armor for that time in the fight. He doesn't have that physical shield around him at all, and he will constantly spawn waves of enemies while you're doing this, and that goes along with breaking his shields. Then he spawns more, and these are ridiculous amounts of enemies. It honestly seems like they're over spawning the amount of enemies it should be there. And like at one point it's just all of the like more medium-sized robots that all do like artillery strikes on you while he's like doing these artillery strikes on you as well. So you basically just have to run around constantly because there's constantly red circles around you that if you stand and do most of your HP. And clearing out all these enemies are always going to be good, but after you take down a shield once, then he regains it again, then you take it down again, then this phase is when he will be jumping around these pedestals and he'll be spawning little eye robots to float around him. Those are much squishier than most of the other enemies, so this is kind of an easier phase. And then you just damage him while he's up on the pedestals. Then he will jump down at the end of that phase. And this next phase is the incredibly hard phase, the reason I couldn't solo it right now. Different builds like a flak specifically with like fadeaway is going to have a much easier time, because basically what happens is it spawns a bubble around it, which you can walk in and out of, enemies can shoot out of, but you can't shoot into, and you have to walk into. So that's like an impenetrable bubble you have to walk into. There's enemies inside of it. Then he has his own physical shield again with his new shielding inside that bubble, that pretty much you just have to follow the spinning open spot, and then you have to take down the shields for that while also surviving the ridiculous amount of damage all these enemies are dealing to you. And once you get that shielding down by following the open slot of his physical shield, then the big dome around him will go away and he'll have another shield health bar, and his physical shield will still be there. I think this one changes to like a different pattern of his physical shield, but basically you just do the same thing. It's also open top as well. So you just have to get that shield down again, and then you do more damage to him. And what happens next is after that, he'll basically break up into two separate parts. This part at the very end is very easy. After you get down, after he goes into that dome and you get down his two shield health bars, it's pretty easy after that. So basically there's one part of him that's just flying around, and you kill that. They're both pretty squishy. That's all armor. Then the other one is like his legs and his brain. That is shield and armor, but that's much more squishy than his normal body. So then you take down that shield, you kill the armor, and he's pretty much dead. Now, after you do that, his brain will actually run around. You want to kill his little brain that's running around as an actual enemy, because that will also drop more boss loot. And that's pretty much the entire fight. That's pretty much the entire raid. I'm going to show you guys my run through of me doing it. If there's any cuts or anything, it's because I wiped on something. I think I fell off the map a few times doing this. But once I get to the last fight, the raid boss, I'm going to show you guys the first wipe I did solo. Then I'm going to show you guys the kill with me and my friend. So it's pretty much the entire thing. This is on Mayhem 3 as well. Mayhem 4 is an absolutely ridiculous increase into like just the amount of sheer health the enemies have. The damage you deal because of how the modifiers work in Mayhem 4 are a bit better. And I think I did basically neutral modifiers for this entire run. I showed at the beginning, I'm pretty sure, but that's pretty much the entire thing on Mayhem 3. I'll be doing videos of how to solo this, of specifically how to solo this later. This is just kind of an overview of everything in the raid. Subscribe if you want to see more Borderlands 3 content. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you think about the raid, what you think about Borderlands 3 as a whole, and thanks for watching.